This devastating story have shocked family, friends, fans, and the community members across the all country and the world. Before we begin, please subscribe, like, comment, and share for part 2. Guys, this horrific slaughtering have enraged their family and fans across the globe. Before we begin, we extend our love and heartfelt prayers to every family who have lost their loved ones in the gang's conflict. May God give you strength, peace of mind during this time. It's hard to trace this war back to one single, cataclysmic event. The beef between these two factions, O Block and STL/EBT, didn't start with gunfire. It started in high school. Simple schoolyard fights between kids from rival neighborhoods. Petty arguments. Shoving matches. But as those kids got older, so did the stakes. And eventually, fists turned into firearms. By the early 2010s, one name stood out in Parkway Gardens: King Von. A proud BD, Von made it clear where he stood. Repping Wick City hard on social media, he embraced his block and his people with no apologies. His loyalty wasn't just for show. He lived it, breathed it. Alongside Von were other feared BDs. HK, J Money, or J Munna. And of course, his right-hand man T-Roy, a duo that the streets started seeing as a deadly pair. Von would later even change his Twitter name to V-Roy, a tribute to T-Roy. His handle? Still today, it's at King Von de Wick, forever locked in with where he came from. The Wick City BDs were known for more than just repping their gang. They were infamous for throwing up GDK signs, GD Terminator. This wasn't just neighborhood talk. This was open warfare, broadcast for the world to see. So who were the GDs they were beefing with? Across the trenches, over in STL/EBT, also known as Tukaville, there was a whole different crew coming up. Names like Jakira Barnes, better known as KI, a young girl who was friends with a member named Tuka. Another STL hitter was FBG, butted together with KI. They were called the Twins. Then there was the Fly Boy Gang, FBG Duck, FBG Brick, and later Lil J. All musically inclined, all repping their side through lyrics and lives alike. Some had beef with O Block, others with 600, but the lines blurred as bodies fell. It all hit a boiling point on January 12, 2011. 15-year-old Shaylee Gregory, known on the streets as Tuka, was waiting at a bus stop on East 63rd Street. A dark vehicle pulled up. Someone wearing a half mask stepped out, exchanged a few words, and in a matter of seconds, Tuka was shot multiple times and left for dead. His close friend, FBG Duck, ran to the scene after hearing the news, only to see his brother's lifeless body on the ground. That moment, it changed everything. Me and him clicked like that. That was one of my real close friends. Every day, spent the night at each other's cribs. Then my cousin came in, crying, saying, "Your friend just got killed." I ran all the way to the block, and there he was on the floor. FBG Duck in Tuka's honor. STL renamed their hood Tukaville, a vow of revenge, and a mission to never forget. But in the twisted reality of Chicago drill culture, even memorials get weaponized. What started as a show of love smoking, Tuka, to honor him, referencing Tupac's outlaws, was quickly flipped by their enemies. BDs began mocking it. Chief Keef's 300 made it mainstream. F*** Tuka gang. A line that would ignite 1,000 more. KI Tuka's childhood friend wasn't just grieving. She was transforming. At just 17, she was rumored to have caught 17 bodies. A teenage assassin, trained by her cousin Boss Trell and mentored in the streets by her brother Seal. KI became a legend of death. Her first rumored hit? O.D. Perry, a respected O Block BD. On August 10th, 2011, around 11:35 p.m., O.D. was gunned down near Parkway Gardens. Shot multiple times, including once in the neck. He was dead within the hour. This wasn't random. It happened on Tuka's birthday. And just like that, O Block was born, renamed in honor of O.D. Another vow of revenge. Another chapter in the blood-soaked rivalry. Though no one was convicted, the streets and later, a 2016 FOIA report pointed fingers at KI and Boss Trell. Even Lil J shared a photo online, saying shout out to them twins that made O Block, referring to Butta and KI. But the violence didn't stop there. On February 12, 2012, Sheroyd Liggins, another O Block member, was shot in the head near Parkway. He fought for days in the hospital before dying on the 20th. Rumors swirled again. Boss Trell was the shooter. Using a red beam laser sight from across the street, It was said to be a sniper-style shot. That same gun, allegedly seen in the critical music video by Lil J and FBG Duck, a Chief Keef diss that dropped months later. Trell and KI even appeared to taunt the BDs on Twitter afterward, throwing subliminal shots in the digital battlefield while bodies kept dropping in the streets. This wasn't just a beef anymore. It was a generational war fueled by loss, pain, pride, and social media. And it was far from over. It's hard to pinpoint one single event that sparked the deep war between O Block SBDs and STL/EBT's GDs. The truth is, a lot of this tension traces back to the early 2000s, all the way to high school beefs, little fights in hallways, and after school. But once them boys got older and guns got involved, those minor squabbles turned into deadly warfare. Back in the early 2010s, King Von was already claiming BD heavy on social media. He was repping Wick City hard, throwing up signs, and showing love to his set Parkway Gardens, aka O Block. He wasn't alone either. Names like HK, J Money, and his right-hand man Tita Roy were all feared hitters from the same block. Vaughn and Tita Roy were especially close, like family. That bond meant something deeper, and it stayed with Vaughn his whole life. That's why his Twitter handle stayed at King Von from the WIC, and why he used the alias V.Roy, a blend of his and T.Roy's names. Wick City BDs were known for making their presence loud, literally throwing up GDK, Gangster Disciple Killer, hand signs in videos and pictures, proudly broadcasting their stance in this war. So who were the GDs they were beefing with? On the STL/EBT side, the opposition had their own line. Jakira Barnes, better known as KI, stood out as a rare female hitter close to fallen. Friend Tuka, she and FBG Butta made up a feared duo known as the Twins. Then you had FBG Brick, FBG Duck, and Lil J GD rappers whose names gained notoriety not just in the streets, but in music too. Other STL soldiers included Lil B, Wooski, Boss Trell, and Lil Document. Now, the death that shook it all up January 12, 2011. 15-year-old Shondale Gregory, known as Tuka, was standing at a bus stop on East 63rd. Out of nowhere, a masked shooter pulled up and let off shots, taking Tuka's life on the spot. FBG Duck, one of his closest friends, sprinted to the scene after hearing the news. He found Tuka's body lying on the pavement, a moment that haunted him forever. From then on, STL renamed their turf Tukaville in his honor. To them, it was more than just a name, it was a vow of vengeance. But things turned grim when smoking Tuka became slang used by enemies to disrespect him. Chief Keef cemented the diss in his song, 300, with the infamous line Tuka Gang. From there, the disrespect spiraled. Ki took that as personal. It turned her from a regular teen to a known killer. Some say she caught 17 bodies before her own death at 17. Her first was allegedly O.D. Perry, a respected BD from Parkway Gardens, gunned down near O Block on August 10, 2011, the same day as Tuka's birthday. In retaliation, the BDs renamed Parkway Gardens to O Block in honor of O.D., just as STL had done for Tuka. He was believed to be behind the hit, and while no one was convicted, a later FOIA request revealed that cops named her and Boss Trell as suspects based on an informant's tip. The violence didn't stop. On February 12, 2012, Sheroid Liggins, a BD from O Block, was shot in the head near Parkway. He died 8 days later. Rumors online pointed fingers at Boss Trell again, with Key and others making cryptic tweets about red beams and perfect aim, hinting at a scoped pistol being used from across the street. The violence wasn't just in the streets, it played out in real time on Twitter. Sheroid's brother, none other than C. Murda, later arrested for the federal murder of FBG Duck. He paid tribute to Sheroid often on Instagram, fueling his own hatred for STL. October 13, 2012, 17-year-old Modell Murray, a GD affiliate, was walking with his cousin on South Rhodes Avenue when he was shot in the chest. He later died at Stroger Hospital. People in the streets whispered that it was King Von behind the trigger. Von later tweeted about Modell, as well as his obsession with catching bodies and how women avoided him once they found out he was a Terminator. This pattern kept repeating. Death, tweets, more death. On October 30th, 2012, Derek Johnson, known as P5 or Crack, was gunned down while walking through STL territory. He wasn't even from there, but word is Vaughn, J Money, and Big A from O Block spotted him, thinking he was an op, and lit him up, allegedly hitting him 6 times in the head and 9 in the body. Shortly after, STL would suffer another devastating blow. Boss Trell, the Red Beam sharpshooter, was planning to skip town. He even tweeted about starting fresh. But on November 8, 2012, just 2 days before his departure, he was found face down in an alley, shot in the back of the head. Rumors say T. Roy and J Money lured him out using a girl as bait, setting him up the exact same way STL had done to BD hitters before. T. Roy even tweeted mocking messages afterward like, "No Trell, stay alive," while STL affiliates mourned their fallen soldier. But STL got their lick back. September 2, 2013, J Money from O Block was set up on the 6600 block of South Roads. Lured by a girl, he ended up in enemy territory where he was allegedly ambushed by KI and Lil B. He tried to run, but was shot in the head. KI even tweeted cryptic messages afterward about shooting people in the back of the head, feeding speculation that she was involved. But revenge eventually caught up to KI herself. On April 11, 2014, she was shot multiple times and Una lived. For years, people speculated King Von was behind it. When he died in 2020, CPD documents came out showing multiple witnesses had named him as her Terminator. There wasn't enough evidence for an arrest, but the streets already knew. A month and a half later, Vaughn would catch another body. This time, it led to his arrest. May 29, 2014, at a birthday party on the 5700 block of South LaSalle, a man named Malcolm Stuckey was killed. He had been eyeballing Vaughn, who stepped out, came back with Big Mike, and let shots fly. Vaughn was arrested, charged, and held down for 3 years. It all went down in an alley. Allegedly, King Vaughn and Big Mike pulled up, hopped out with loaded firearm, and made their way toward the front porch of the house. Their target, Malcolm Stuckey and 2 other men chilling outside. Witnesses later said they opened fire, letting off over 20 rounds. Malcolm Stuckey was hit in the head and died on the spot. One of the other men ran inside the house. The other took off down the street. Both were hit, but somehow, both survived. Vaughn and Big Mike allegedly fled the scene in their car. But this wasn't the kind of heat you could outrun. A double shooting, one fatal that was a major case. Within weeks, both Vaughn and Big Mike were in cuffs. King Vaughn was officially charged with murder and attempted murder. He sat in the Cook County Jail fighting the case for over 3 years. But in a twist no one expected, Vaughn beat the charges. Big Mike took a deal and flipped, giving statements that initially tied Vaughn to the shooting but later retracted. Vaughn walked free on a technicality. But while Vaughn was locked up, the war didn't pause. O Block was vulnerable, and in his absence, the streets took more blood. July 17, 2016, Chino Gatewood, better known as Chino from O Block, was gunned down on the 5700 block of South Union. Reports say a car pulled up, someone inside asked where they could buy some weed, then opened fire, emptying a clip into Chino's body. He died later that day at St. Bernard Hospital. Online debates still rage over who was behind it. Some say it was STL, others point at different sets. What's confirmed is that Chino was the brother of BJ, who now goes by Chino Mafia on Instagram. Another O Block soldier down, and another family member burning for revenge. Then came one of the most brutal hits, Big A, one of the original shooters rumored to have been with Vaughn during KI's murder. In late 2016, Big A was shot in the face at Sammy's Grill, just across from O Block. Around 3:10 a.m. word on the street said he was a top target of bounty due to his alleged involvement in KI's death. He even earned the nickname Aki, afterward a twisted tribute from the opposition. Rumors flew that the shooter who dropped Big A was a blood relative of KI herself. But the most devastating blow came in early 2017. T. Roy, real name James Johnson, was gunned down. Roy wasn't just a shooter, he was an enforcer. Feared, respected, Savage tattooed on his neck, he went by O Block Savage online. In videos, he made it clear, "I'm a real shooter. You see me? Leave me alone. 'Cause if I was on you, you wouldn't even know. I'm just gonna scope you." Boss Top once told Fuchsia's TV, Roy was just different. A real demon. Fearless. No hesitation. That day, Roy was either buying clothes or lurking up shopping in a store on the hunt for an enemy he believed frequented the area. But someone spotted him first. A gunfight broke out inside the store. Surveillance caught the moment it went down. Roy was shot in the chest and died at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. He was just 23. The streets mourned. Chief Keef, Lil Durk, Lil Reese, C-Murder all sent tributes. But no one took it harder than King Von. Von was still locked up when it happened. The news shattered him. In his own words, during a later live stream, he said, "They just lived T. Roy. They hugging me, grown men hugging me. That's my best friend, boy. I'm in my cell losing it." After Roy's death, everything changed. This was the moment Get Back Gang was born. Not just a name, but a mission. Revenge. A group of young O Block members, hurt, angry, and with no guidance, formed an underground movement to get retaliation for every lost brother. Blood for blood. From 600 hinted at it on Twitter, saying ominously, "It's a lot to come." It was a silent declaration of war. The losses kept piling up. Roy's own brother would soon be dead too. So would others. Zell, Muwap's cousin, and even Munna, all linked to the Get Back movement, and all allegedly unalived as the cycle of revenge spun faster. After Roy's murder, STL laughed. Literally. FBG Duck went on live stream clowning the news. "What you think about Roy getting popped? Is he dead? Damn, it must not be that important. I don't even see it all over the internet." It was pure disrespect, but the streets weren't about to let it slide. Word was, the man who killed Roy was a well-known gang member named TB, real name Terry Berry. After the murder, TB tweeted out, "Happy Valentine's Day." Another post said, "Somebody got hit trying to do a hit." Witnesses later ID'd TB in a photo lineup. He was often seen near that store his own block. It made sense why Roy went looking for him. Sadly, it was also the place he would lose his life. 2017 would become one of the bloodiest years in Chicago drill history. Bodies dropped left and right, many tied to Get Back Gang's silent campaign. A new chapter had begun, and O Block wasn't just trying to survive anymore. They were out for vengeance. It was the summer of 2017, and in Chicago, death was in the air like humidity. Every block had a ghost. Every clique, a target. The streets were drenched in retaliation. And for those deep in the war, killing didn't just feel like survival, it felt like indulge. Poppy, real name Sherrod Rhyme, was just doing his job, helping a customer outside the LMP Foods candy warehouse on the 7000 block of South State. It was a Friday, late afternoon, broad daylight. That didn't matter. A car pulls up. A masked gunman steps out. A ski-masked shooter jumps out. One shot to the head, two more to the body. A cold, surgical hit. Eyewitnesses say it was HK from O Block, the man, soon to be known as the Headshot King. People cried. Strangers tried to help, but it was too late. Poppy died where he worked, and, with his death, a blood-soaked summer was fully set in motion. 6300 St. Lawrence Avenue, sunny, day turning overcast. A slow zoom on the gangway. Just a month and a day later, it was Brick, real name Jermaine Robinson, FBG Duck's brother. He was standing with Kobe, Stanley Jacoby, Mac, on their home block. A car pulled up. 3 shooters jumped out. Kobe was lived on site. Brick ran, but they chased him into a gangway and executed him. FBG Duck and his mother arrived as the crowd was still gathering. His brother was gone. His mom pleaded with him, "Don't seek revenge. Go to the studio. Channel the pain." I said, "Duck, I need you. Don't do nothing stupid. Don't go out like that. That pain music y'all heard? That's where it came from. Right there. In that moment." But revenge was already in motion. O Block had lost T.Roy earlier that year, and they wanted the shooter. TB. Tweets popped off. HK appeared in TB's IG Live, asking one thing. "Where you at?" September 26, 2017. A stolen black car pulls up. Shots ring out. TB Terry Berry hit multiple times. Rushed to Northwestern. Pronounced dead. New op pack. TB shouldn't have dissed. Boss top tweet. He begged for his life. The internet crowned him T.Roy Slayer. But now he was dead. Just another nickname to be smoked and mocked. Then, in a twist nobody saw coming, the Headshot King himself was gunned down. HK, Hakeem Murray, shot multiple times in O Block. Left to die in the same community he vowed to defend. Tweets from C-Murda, E-Dog, Lil Durk mourning. Ops posting mocking captions. He had avenged his brother. But the streets didn't care. O Block mourned. STL celebrated. The cycle rolled on. December 2017. Jail doors opening. King Von stepping out. Zoom on his eyes. Streetlights. Chicago skyline. Then the city shook again. King Von was home. After 3.5 years locked up for murder, he beat the case. His co-defendant Big Mike talked to the feds. Von stayed silent. The streets noticed. The silence saved him. Big Mike got 28 years. And Von, he was ready, hungry, back in the war and back in the booth. While Von returned to the streets, the other side was turning pain into music. FBG Wooski. Duck. Computers drop in January 2018. And the disrespect was reaching nuclear levels. The streets were still bleeding. But now, the war had a soundtrack. Summer in Chicago is supposed to be about block parties, barbecues, and warm nights on the porch. But in 2017, the streets of the South Side were soaked in blood. This wasn't just about get-backs anymore. This was a chain reaction of executions, and the whole city felt it. Just when the opposition thought it couldn't get worse, the most feared member of O Block comes home. FBG Wooski drops Computers Remix, a track that burns through YouTube and the streets. It's not just a diss, it's war propaganda. Every line is a bullet aimed at fallen BD soldiers. OD, Big A, J Money, Chino. No one was safe. The disrespect? Surgical. Cold. Ducks in the video dancing. The whole St. Lawrence is lit. But every track has a cost. And just like that, another target was on their backs. With King Von back on the streets and Wooski throwing lyrical bombs, 2018 started off tense. But Von wasn't moving like a regular hitter no more. He had a new vision, a bigger purpose. He started rapping, taking his war stories and turning them into bars. But make no mistake, he wasn't done spinning. Not yet. Von was calculated, moving smart, quiet. They say he kept mental tabs on every op, every slight. People say when he came home, he picked up the torch for HK, for T. Roy, for O Block. And now that the cameras were on him, he was ready to play chess while others were playing checkers. It was supposed to be a funeral, a day to mourn Vasil Dusky the man, a respected STL/EBT member, killed earlier that month. But the killers don't care about grief. As Duck, Wooski, and other STL members gathered at Mount Hope Cemetery, a black car pulled up. Gunfire erupted. Chaos. Wooski got hit in the head. Miraculously, he survived. But he wasn't the same. His speech slowed. His movement was different. The street demon who dropped Computers was now fighting for his life and recovery. And in O Block, they celebrated. Tweets poured in. I heard dude forgot how to rap now. New pack alert. Wooski getting hit at a funeral? That crossed a whole new line. But at this point, there were no lines left. While STL was losing members, Duck started rising. He dropped Slide, a certified hit. Millions of views. Radio play. Labels were watching. He had finally made it. But the war never left him. Even in success, he was still dissing. Still naming dead ops. The chorus was catchy, but the verses were pure venom. Duck said himself, if you want smoke, we get to it. Let's do it. That wasn't just a song. That was a challenge. O Block was listening and planning. Von dropped Crazy Story. Everything changed. The industry was locked in. He was storytelling like a war journalist with a body count. He rapped about shootings, chases, setups, and it all sounded too real because it was. He wasn't just entertaining the streets. He was the streets. Lil Durk brought him close, signed him to ODF, and the two dropped Crazy Story 2.0. Von's name rang bells from Atlanta to LA. But back home, the war was still active. Von was up, rich, and rap famous. But he still had names on his mental hit list. And STL/EBT was still at the top. Duck had signed a record deal with Sony, moved his mom out the hood, tried to change his life, tried to do it right. But the disrespect never stopped. In music, in tweets, in videos. Duck was dissing two, dropping dead bitches, naming his ops one by one. And every time he did, the clock ticked louder. He knew he was a target. Told his mom multiple times, if they get me, make sure y'all good. Duck is shopping for clothes. Broad daylight. Surveillance shows cars circling. Then, too, shooters jump out, chasing him down and letting off over 35 rounds. Duck is hit. His girl is hit. Another man is hit. Duck dies on the scene. Right there, on one of the richest streets in the city. The killers didn't care. No masks. No hesitation. It was an operation. Cold. Precise. The city froze. It wasn't just a drill rapper getting killed. This was a statement. Less than a year later, the feds came knocking. RICO charges hit hard. 5 O Block members C. Murda, Muwap, Zell, Los, and DQ were indicted for FBG Duck's murder. The feds had surveillance, license plates, phone data, Instagram activity, even clothes matching the day of the hit. The internet called it the fall of O Block. Zell committed suicide before trial. The others faced life. It was the end of an era, but not the end of the war. Mama Duck stands at a podium, her voice firm, her eyes wet. I lost my sons, but I didn't lose my soul. They tried to break me. I'm still here. These women, Mama Duck, T. Roy's mom, Von's people carry the weight of this war. They bury children and fight for justice. Alone. And still, the music plays. The fans cheer, but behind the hits are funerals. In the bitter cold of February 2018, the Chicago drill scene was heating up, tensions simmering beneath the surface, ready to boil over. That month, FBG Duck released the music video for Slide, a track that wasn't just another drill song, it was a public challenge. The chorus was an open invitation, a dare for his enemies to come through and slide on him. The video's imagery was raw and unforgiving. Duck rapped with cold precision, gripping a gun with a drum magazine, flanked by shooters whose eyes never left the camera. The message clear. This was a declaration of war. They were saying, "Come and get me if you're brave enough." But beneath this public bravado, there was a more complex story. Duck's mother had warned him, urged him to channel his pain and rage into music, to focus on sliding on tracks rather than sliding on the streets. It was a promise he tried to keep, especially after the death of Brick, his close friend and fellow rapper. The gamble paid off. Slide blew up, earning Duck a rumored $2 million record deal. For a moment, it seemed like he might finally escape the deadly cycle of street violence that had plagued him his whole life. But drill music, especially in Chicago, was never just about art or money. It was a battlefield, and Slide was an open call for anyone with a gun and a grudge. Meanwhile, across town, King Von was watching. Freshly acquitted of murder charges and hungry to make his mark, Von saw in Duck's success a blueprint, but one he wanted to twist to his own ends. On May 27, 2018, Von dropped Beat That Body with fellow bodybeater Tichef Bizu, a track dripping with menace and violent promises. Von rapped about hunting down enemies, about catching bodies like trophies, making it clear that he hadn't left the streets behind. Brushes with the law and street violence was irresistible to drill fans hungry for authenticity. Unlike Duck, who had made a vow to his mom to leave sliding behind, Von was juggling his budding rap career with his full-time role as an O Block shooter. The streets weren't a memory for him, they were a lifestyle he continued to live and breathe. Duck was often seen with his close friend and trusted associate, Can't Get Right aka Man Man. They shared moments of camaraderie, but the ever-present danger was impossible to ignore. In a candid vlog, Can't Get Right nervously scanned over Duck's shoulder, eyes darting constantly, a grim reminder of how unsafe it really was to stand on these blocks. Duck was clear in his stance, no room for jokes. I will live anybody who disses me. You diss me? I'm coming for you. This ain't a game. It wasn't an empty threat. In Chicago, diss tracks and insults were invitations to real-life violence. And for Duck, the stakes were deadly serious. Then, tragedy struck on July 16, 2018. DeAndre Wallace, better known as Can't Get Right, was waiting outside a store on the 400 block of East 63rd Street, a routine moment that would become fatal. 2 men pulled up and waited patiently. When Wallace stepped outside, the shooters opened fire, raining bullets down. Wallace was lived instantly, but so was an innocent bystander, a man simply sweeping outside the restaurant, caught in the crossfire of a deadly gang war. CCTV footage captured the attack. Witnesses filmed the horrifying aftermath on their phones, scenes too graphic for public broadcast. Hours later, FBG Duck was reportedly shot in a separate incident. Some sources suggest the 2 shootings were linked. Others say Duck was discovered injured away from the scene. Whatever the truth, Duck refused to cooperate with police, protecting himself and those around him by staying silent. This was the stark reality of life for Duck, a successful rapper with a record deal, but still trapped in a city where survival was never guaranteed. The violence didn't end there. On the very same day as the double murder, King Von took to Instagram live broadcasting from Atlanta with Mimo 600 to mock his enemies' deaths in real time. It was a brutal display of bravado and street theatrics, a performance that doubled as a self-incriminating confession. Von and Mimo lit blunts, laughed, and repeatedly name-checked "Can't Get Right," asking their followers if they knew who'd just been Unalived. Comments flooded in, many openly boasting about the shooting, confirming their roles in the attack. They reveled in the hits, celebrating 2 down and already planning the next strike. Their mocking didn't stop with insults. They scoffed at heartfelt Instagram tributes posted by their enemies, dismissing them as fake or weak. "Do you try to shut up? Be dissing you? You better not get from here." Von coldly suggested "Can't Get Right" must have known death was coming. He probably knew he was going to die. Don't nobody even care about K like that. Ain't no slide gonna happen for that. Back in Chicago, the tit-for-tat violence escalated. O Block affiliates posted photos of slain STL members like Duke, proclaiming they were shooters, a warning that the war was far from over. Von teased a new OP pack on Twitter, signaling that retaliation was imminent and that his crew was ready to strike again. Duck, meanwhile, mourned privately, sharing grief and pain quietly on social media, caught between a rising career and the raw losses of the streets. By August 2018, King Von's star was rising alongside his reputation for violence. He dropped Problems on Lil Durk's Only the Family compilation, a song that openly detailed how his shooters were out catching bodies on his behalf. Von was living a double life, rapper by day, soldier by night, convinced he could navigate both worlds. But the streets don't pause for fame, and the deeper Von got into music, the more his ties to violence threatened to pull him under. August 2018 marked a turning point in the deadly saga between O Block and STL. King Von was no longer just a rising rapper. He was a commander orchestrating a war from both sides of the mic and the streets. His track Problems dropped on Lil Durk's Only the Family compilation, a song that left no doubt about his mindset and his crew's role. The lyrics were a blunt admission. Von's shooters were actively catching bodies, a chilling code for killing enemies, and their reach was growing. The line between music and real life blurred ever further. Drill tracks weren't just storytelling. They were battle cries, press releases, and sometimes even confessions. Chicago's violence analysts noted how drill music's content mirrored the escalation of street warfare, almost as if rappers were chronicling their own hits, their own murders in real time. It was a dangerous feedback loop. Von's crew was particularly brazen. Social media feeds were littered with taunts, videos of shootings, and cryptic posts that police found difficult to investigate because the perpetrators were essentially broadcasting their own crimes. Meanwhile, FBG Duck remained a complex figure caught between his promise to his mother and the reality of the streets. He was grieving his close friend Can't Get Right, dealing with his own shooting wounds, and trying to keep his music career afloat. But the wounds ran deeper than the physical. The emotional toll of losing people he cared about weighed heavily on Duck's social media. Yet, unlike Von's aggressive online presence, Duck was more restrained, a man trying to balance survival with success. Von was doubling down on the street life, ramping up his gang ties, building his reputation as a relentless killer, and leveraging that image to climb the drill hierarchy. Duck was attempting to move past the streets, trying to carve a legacy through music, hoping to break the cycle that had swallowed so many. September 2018, another wave of shootings hits Chicago's South Side. O Block and STL trades blows relentlessly. October 2018, King Von drops Crazy Story, a narrative rap that cements his storytelling prowess and street credibility. The song goes viral, turning Von into a star beyond Chicago. November 2018, FBG Duck continues releasing music, but his public appearances grow more cautious, reflecting the increasing danger around him. December 2018, police intensify investigations into the rising violence, but social media confessions and taunts make arrests complicated. By the end of 2018, the feud was no longer just a local gang war, it had become a national spectacle, amplified by drill music's explosive popularity. For Von, the spotlight was a double-edged sword. Every new hit track brought more fame, but also more enemies, more scrutiny, and more risk. For Duck, The music deal was a beacon of hope, but the streets that raised him weren't willing to let him go so easily. Many saw these young men as products of a cycle of poverty, trauma, and systemic neglect. Their stories were tragic chapters in a larger narrative about Chicago's forgotten neighborhoods, places where survival meant choosing between the gun and the mic. As the new year approached, both Vaughn and Duck were walking a razor's edge, balancing between stardom and street warfare. What followed would shock the city and change the course of drill music forever. The war was far from over, and what came next would go down as one of the most shocking and despicable acts of violence the streets of Chicago had ever witnessed. Ironically, one where nobody lost their life. But before that, another senseless Una living would. Set the stage. Chicago rapper Dusky the Man, born Vantries Chris, was shot in the head and neck. Drive-by on the 5600 block of South Michigan Avenue. The suspects rolled up in a brown vehicle, opened fire, and left Dusky dead in the street. Photos of his lifeless body would circulate online within hours. Members from 600 celebrated Dusky's death publicly. Meanwhile, O Block affiliates, though more cryptic, tweeted eerie "CHH" emojis. Dusky was known to be close with another Chicago rapper, Wooski. The two had dropped songs together, including their February 2018 track Shooters. But Wooski had also been making enemies. Earlier that year, he dropped a vicious remix of Computers, taunting his dead rivals and putting a target squarely on his back. After Dusky's murder, it seemed like the Get Back gang had something major brewing. They knew Wooski would be at Dusky's funeral, and word is, they planned a strike for that very day. Even crazier, E-Dog and King Von reportedly FaceTimed Wooski days before the funeral, mocking him and hinting at a surprise. Meanwhile, E-Dog was tweeting publicly, hinting another Get Back was on the way. His words, "Another one coming, we finna get rid of dude." As the funeral let out that afternoon, a car pulled up near the church. Gunmen jumped out and began spraying bullets indiscriminately into the crowd. It looked like a war zone. Witnesses reported an initial burst of shots, followed by several dozen more. Their primary target? Wooski. Police heard a barrage of gunfire around noon across the street from a funeral service. The victim, Vantries Chris, aka Dusky the Man, had been murdered earlier this month. In total, 6 people were shot, including Wooski himself, hit in the head, point blank. Miraculously, he survived. At first, there were rumors Wooski had died, but FBG Duck went live on Instagram to confirm that his homie was alive. Shortly after the shooting, King Von tweeted boldly, "We won." Muwop, another O Block member, retweeted in agreement. The message was clear. They saw this as a victory in the streets. From there, Vaughn doubled down on the disrespect, dropping lyric after lyric mocking Wooski's funeral shooting. On his track Back Again, Vaughn raps about sliding at funerals and shooting everyone outside. Slide at funerals, Wooski feel it. It's shocking to think he got away with this, turning real-life violence into lyrics. But that rawness, that recklessness, it's exactly what drew people into Vaughn's music. Vaughn had just dropped War With Us, a track with lyrics believed to reference the 2014 murder of K.I., the infamous female GD shooter. Years later, Chicago PD would officially name King Von as her terminator. But the song that truly catapulted Vaughn to mainstream notoriety dropped in December 2018. That was the moment Crazy Story hit the streets, a chilling, vivid storytelling track where Vaughn walks listeners through a robbery, using a woman as bait before shooting his victim. His flow was cold, calculated, captivating, but it was the closing bars that made it unforgettable. I'm not from 63rd. With that line, Vaughn turned 63rd into a national talking point. He doubled down on the disrespect, selling merch. 63rd Street signs crossed out. The phrase became a part of his brand. Crazy Story, released under OEF, Lil Durk's label, blew up tens of millions of views, radio spins, and YouTube virality. The remix, featuring Lil Durk himself, made Vaughn a star. But the more famous he got, the more disrespectful his music became. He wasn't just rapping, he was waging psychological warfare, naming names, referencing real murders, and mocking the dead. His lyrical feud with FBG Duck soon turned into a rap beef, with diss tracks and IG lives traded back and forth. But in a city like Chicago, beef doesn't stay on wax for long. What happened at Dusky the Man's funeral was more than a retaliation, it was a line crossed that could never be uncrossed. A sacred moment turned into a battlefield. Grief turned into gunfire. And for the streets of Chicago, it was confirmation that nothing was off limits anymore. Vaughn celebrated, but boldly. The music, the tweets, the disrespect, it all kept building, like pressure in a pipe, waiting to explode. This wasn't just street beef anymore. It was personal, it was public, and it was profitable. King Vaughn was about to rise higher than ever before, fueled by war stories, survivors' guilt, and the applause of a world fascinated by pain. But the higher he climbed, the more enemies he made. And across the city, FBG Duck was watching, plotting, rapping, waiting for the moment to strike back. Because in Chicago, nothing stays in the past. Every funeral, every verse, every tweet, it's just another chapter in a story that's always one trigger pull away from tragedy. He had fans, money, buzz, and undeniable talent. His debut album, Welcome to O Block, had just dropped on October 30th, and it was his best work yet. The streets felt it. The industry felt it. Vaughn was next. But beneath the surface, the same demons that fueled his rise were now chasing him harder than ever. Vaughn's image was as real as it gets. He wasn't just rapping about the war, he was born in it. Every bar, every lyric, came from real pain, real loss. But while rap was becoming a career for Vaughn, for his enemies, it was still personal. He had dissed too many names, tweeted too much, mocked too many deaths, and FBG Duck's murder just months earlier had turned the tension nuclear. Whispers on the street said Duck's name wasn't the last to be crossed off. Vaughn's success didn't shield him, it made him a bigger target. He was paranoid, moving tight, keeping his circle close. But sometimes your pride walks faster than your protection. Vaughn was in Atlanta, celebrating his album release. He hit the studio, took photos, laughed with the team. Everything felt like it was coming together. That night, he pulled up to Monaco Hookah Lounge, a popular spot in downtown ATL. But he wasn't there to party. Word was Quando Rondo, a rapper affiliated with NBA YoungBoy, and someone Vaughn allegedly had tension with, was at the same club. Old tweets, beef by association, energy between camps, whatever the reason, Vaughn wasn't letting it slide. At 3:20 a.m., Vaughn spotted Quando in the parking lot. No words, no talking. Vaughn ran up and punched him in the face. A fight broke out. Panic, screaming, and then gunfire. Vaughn was shot multiple times in the torso. His homie Slutty was killed on the spot. Another man from his crew went down. Vaughn was rushed to the hospital. He died later that morning, 26 years old, just 1 week after his debut album. The news hit like an earthquake. The streets cried. The industry mourned. O Block was in shock. Lil Durk, Vaughn's brother in arms, posted a single broken heart emoji and went silent for days. From fans to fellow rappers, everyone recognized the weight of the loss. Vaughn was more than a rapper, he was a walking contradiction. Charismatic but dangerous. Thoughtful but violent. And just like that, he was gone. But the story didn't end there. Vaughn's death didn't bring peace, it only stirred more chaos. Rumors flew. Retaliation threats were everywhere. O Block was on edge. Meanwhile, the feds had already been watching. 2 months later, the FBI arrested 5 O Block members, including Muwap, for the murder of FBG Duck. They tied cell phones, car rentals, music videos, and social media posts together in a sweeping indictment. Vaughn's name was included in the FBI files as a suspected leader involved in planning the hit. He died before he could ever be charged. His rise and fall were complete. From Southside survivor to mainstream martyr, Vaughn's life told the story of a young man who carried every death he'd ever seen until the weight finally broke him. In the end, Vaughn's greatest gift, his truth, was also his greatest curse. He never switched up. He never played fake. But the same street that made him a legend refused to let him live long enough to change. The war didn't stop with Vaughn. If anything, his death was just another bloodstained page in a never-ending cycle. A cycle where talent dies young, where pain gets put on beats, where funerals follow albums, and where every verse might be a eulogy. In the aftermath of King Vaughn's death, O Block felt like a kingdom without a crown. The face of the movement was gone, but the war? It was still raging. Only now it wasn't just the streets watching. The feds were watching too. For years, authorities had been quietly building a case. They weren't just investigating shootings, they were mapping out a criminal enterprise. Phones were tapped. Social media was being archived. Music videos were dissected like evidence logs. And in October 2021, the hammer dropped. 5 men from O Block were arrested by the FBI, all charged with federal racketeering and the brazen daylight murder of FBG Duck on the Gold Coast of Chicago. The names on that indictment shook the whole city. Muwop, Vaughn's right-hand man and O Block frontline hitter. C-Tang, Los, Kenny Mack, DQ. The feds claimed this wasn't just random street violence. This was organized retaliation, executed with precision, and backed by a criminal network that spanned music, guns, and gang ties. They said it was more than a killing, it was a message. A flex, a show of power in enemy territory. And Vaughn, he was named in those same documents as a key figure in the planning of the murder. Had he lived, he likely would have been indicted too. The indictment outlined how the crew rented vehicles in Vaughn's name, tracked Duck's location through social media, carried out the hit in broad daylight at a luxury shopping district, fled the scene with military-level coordination. They even mentioned a celebration back at O Block, with footage showing suspects partying after the murder. This wasn't just gang beef anymore. This was federal territory RICO cases, life sentences, and no room for street codes. With Muwop and others gone, O Block was officially under siege. Leaders were either dead, locked up, or laying low. The music slowed down, the momentum stalled. The youngins still repping the block were either paranoid or plotting. And the rest of the city? They were watching the mighty fall. Meanwhile, Dirk, who had been Vaughn's closest ally, began pulling back. Still repped ODF, still shouted out the trenches. But you could feel the shift. He was protecting the brand now. Too many eyes, too much heat. Dirk even scrubbed certain songs, backed off old affiliations. And in interviews, he stayed silent on anything tied to Duck, Vaughn, or the case. The streets were hot, and O Block was burning from the inside. This wasn't just about a few rappers beefing. This was a cultural implosion, a moment where drill music, gang warfare, and federal surveillance all collided. It raised the question, was this still art, or was it all evidence? The lyrics, the tweets, the videos? To the fans, they were bangers. To the FBI, they were confessions. And for the people still living in O Block, it wasn't music, it was survival. As the years passed, the glow around King Vaughn began to fade, replaced by court updates, trial date, and the growing realization that this story wasn't headed for a happy ending. O Block went from being a myth, to a headline, to a cautionary tale. And somewhere deep in the heart of Chicago's South Side, a community still grieved. Mothers still buried their sons, and the cycle kept spinning. Because in Chicago, it's never just music. By the time the gun smoke cleared and the courtrooms filled, the music had stopped meaning what it used to. This wasn't entertainment anymore. It was real. Too real. Bodies were dropping. Mothers were mourning. Feds were watching. And behind the headlines, behind the YouTube views and the lyrics that got shouted in clubs, there were families. There was pain. There was trauma that never left. FBG Duck's mother, Lashina Weekly, didn't just lose a son, she became the voice of every Chicago mother who had buried a child. She didn't hide. She didn't fold. She went live, went public, started calling names, pointing fingers. She wasn't just grieving, she was fighting son out to be a villain. But Duck was trying to change. He was trying to leave Chicago. He had a deal on the table. He wanted peace. But in a city built on retaliation, peace was never simple. Duck had made his name dissing the dead. Vaughn returned fire and music. The fans picked sides, and when both of them ended up dead, the internet did what it always does, turned tragedy into content. But for Lashina, this wasn't drill culture. This was real life. A funeral she couldn't afford, a war she couldn't stop, and she wasn't alone. Back on the South Side, O Block was quiet. Not silent, but not what it used to be. The murals of Vaughn were still up. Kids still wore not from 63rd hoodies. But something had shifted. Vaughn's energy was gone. Some of the younger homies still held onto his name, dropping tribute tracks, throwing up signs. But they were also watching the RICO case unfold. Vaughn was gone. Muwop was locked. Duck was dead. The stars of Chicago drill were disappearing one by one. And for what? A song? A tweet? A block that nobody owned, but everybody died for. When drill first broke, it was about survival, expression, anger, truth. But by 2020, it had become a double-edged sword, a way out and a fast track to a casket. The fans loved the authenticity, but they didn't have to live the reality. They weren't ducking bullets. They weren't going to funerals. They were just hitting play. Vaughn's storytelling was mesmerizing. Duck's pain was palpable, but both of them bled out on city streets that didn't care about violence. Ask the labels, and they'll say it was all business. Ask the fans, and they'll say it was real. Ask the streets, and they'll say it was necessary. But ask the mothers, and they'll ask, was it worth it? Was the money worth the mayhem? Was the clout worth the coffin? Was the fame worth losing it all before 30? Because when the noise fades and the charges stick, the only thing left is silence. King Von left behind millions of fans, a catalog of raw truth, and a legend that still echoes through drill music. FBG Duck left behind kids, a grieving mother, and a legacy of resistance against the odds. But both of them left way too soon. In the end, drill music didn't kill them, but it gave their enemies a microphone, and it gave their killers a soundtrack. King Von and FBG Duck didn't just make music, they told stories. Stories about life, pain, loyalty, betrayal, and survival. But those stories weren't just songs. They were warnings. Echoes of a city trapped in a cycle that repeats. In Chicago's drill scene, fame comes fast, but it often carries a heavy price. For every hit song, there's a funeral. For every viral video, a grieving family. Drill artists walk a razor's edge, carrying their block on their backs, while the whole world watches. Von's voice, Duck's legacy still fuels debates. Their lyrics, their stories, their pain immortalized on social media, streaming platforms, and in the streets. But immortality isn't always a blessing. The fame they gained brought opportunities, but also enemies. The spotlight that elevated them also exposed them. Their music became evidence. Their lives became headlines. But drill didn't die with them. A new generation picked up the torch, some trying to escape the violence, others still caught in the same struggle. The question remains, will they break the cycle or repeat it? The story of King Von, FBG Duck, and O Block is more than just rap and rivalry. It's about a city, a culture, and a generation searching for meaning amidst chaos. Their dreams were bigger than the streets, but the streets never let go. Thank you for witnessing this story. May their voices be heard, and their pain never forgotten. Please subscribe, like, share, comment, and support us for more.